Hey everybody, good noon soon from New York, and good evening, Omar in Dubai, right? I mean, yeah, what time is it?
Good evening, Danny. It is 7 p.m. in Dubai at the moment.
Great. So I see, actually, I opened already the our call, so people are joining us now, and I will start by reading, a couple of words about you and and your story, and then we'll start our discussion. I think we have a very interesting day today, even though challenging. I just lost the main lamp here, so I hope you guys see me well enough. So I'm speaking today with the next generation of a fascinating family that has built one of the most impressive companies in Iraq that continue to grow during unstable times as well. um, um, Omar Al Handal is the managing director of Al Handal International Group. We'll discuss the challenges and milestones of the family from Iraq to a global group in the UAE. Omar is a result-driven, flexible, and solution-oriented professional, current managing director of the Al Handal International Group. Throughout his career, he learned from his family the value of hard work, keeping family spirit and principles in line with business success. As a business leader, he's always looking for ways to improve the communities he serves through corporate social responsibility plans and sustainability practices throughout the organization's processes. The group's knowledge of the local business environment in Iraq has enabled them to execute projects and developments in the retail banking, real estate development, airlines, and hospitality industries. Based in both Dubai and Iraq, Omar is also interested in Iraqi startup ecosystem to build communities, drive acceleration, and inspire. This interest transformed in 2018 into the Station Foundation, to which Omar is co-founder of, the first co-working space in Baghdad. We should talk about that definitely, and Iraq's leading one. At the Station Foundation, Omar offers a hub for young entrepreneurs to work and develop, and a center for the private sector to strive. Omar is skilled at providing valuable solutions to address operational challenges, making sound decisions within fast-paced, high-pressured environments. He's also a valued advisor, a team leader, and a sound communicator, being recognized for his strategic mindset and great results. And I can tell you from knowing him, he's also a remarkable guy. And I'm very fortunate to have met you, Omar. And this is where I should say that I'd like to thank our mutual friend, Robin Titus, that I always said he has a name that is very grand, like Robin Titus. Great name, Robin. A remarkable person that knows basically everybody out there, and he introduced us. We thank him for that and making this happen. So here we are. So I've been to, I met you last time I was in Dubai, and it was great. We spent some time together. And yeah, so how are things right now? How are things in Dubai? I heard, the U.S. Looks at Dubai now as a little bit of I think they had a warning about the COVID situation a little bit. How are things on your end? How do you guys deal with the variant that you see around you, in Dubai lately in the last couple of months?
Well, Danny, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you and with your prominent listeners. Yeah, from our end, I mean, with the changes that we always see with the COVID and the new variants that keeps on changing and keeps on hitting human species, the situation it's stable. I would call it. The markets are open. The nightlife, all of like the malls. There is nothing of a concern. At the same time, the cases around 1,000 to 1,700 on all over UAE. I believe yes, UAE still it's on the red flag or red zone from the US, maybe some countries of Europe. Although there is a lot of easing with the vaccination horizon, but we keep on seeing we need to get a booster, we need to get that vaccination on the other pros and cons. Yeah, but overall, I would say the situation is stable. We got good healthcare systems. The supply chain is marvelous, even with when the whole thing started in March until today. We haven't seen any chaos in the markets or in the supply chain. So the government have done a tremendous emergency plan to equip all what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I was there just now, and I had a ball, and I think people were cautious, and especially when I went to from Dubai. When I went out, I was always checked thoroughly. So I think you guys, do a great job there. In Abu Dhabi, when I was
In Abu Dhabi, yes.
as well. So I wanted to maybe begin with a little bit of the history of the company. So how did it start? Basically, your grandfather, and maybe you can share with us. You're third generation. Maybe you can share with us how it came to be.
Sure, definitely. I would love to take you from the beginning of how our family business started. Started from a really long time back, around 1940s, when my great grandfather dropped school when he was in his 8th grade to help his father at that time and on their daily living. So he worked as a laborer, and then little by little he started working in different jobs. Started a small supermarket at that time, inspired by Spinneys, the famous supermarket chains or hypermarket chains. And from there, he started a family. He brought 7 boys and 8 girls from a single mother. And then he educated them and gave them what he could do. And from there, the G2, which is the father and the uncles from that time, they took over the business. And then we worked in different lines after the supermarket and small ventures that they started at that time. We had tires business at that time, that we were importing tires and selling it in the local Iraqi market. We also had our own furniture shop chains in Baghdad. And from there, my father came and he took a decision to come to UAE in 1994. That was after the Gulf War in 1990s. Nevertheless, the war that we have seen, and they have witnessed the Gulf War and the Iran-Iraq war. So he thought that it would be a good time to come out of the country and see a country that is more stable. And UAE at that time, it wasn't as what you have seen when you came. It was just a plain land, small developments was happening here and there. So from there, he started a logistic company. What was import and export logistics to the Iraqi market, because with the regime that we had at that time, Iraq was relying heavily on the imports of goods. So we were working in that line. And then from there, a couple of, I would say, initiatives that we had. We worked in real estate assets, buying and selling. And then the US invasion happened 2003. Then at that time, before 2003, the banks in Iraq, or the bank system, was state-owned banks. We had the central bank, and we had 4 only state-owned banks. After the invasion, it was kind of open. So my father saw the opportunity of establishing a private bank. So we established our bank in 2005. It's a retail bank. Consists of more than 11 branches all over the major cities of Iraq, and one of the leading banks. So this is one of the lines of the business. And the second is real estate development. We are building 5 residential projects in Iraq, more than 20,000 house units. Half of the project is affordable housing, and the second would be medium to high ended market segmentation. And we're also working in the airline industry, as you have mentioned. We are Emirates Airlines partners in Iraq since 2010. And we also are working in retail and hospitality. We started our own gym chains, and we started on our own organic restaurants. And on the other hand, CSR initiative, which is the Station Foundation for Entrepreneurship. It's a non-profit organization. It's the first co-working space that was funded by our group in 2018, and we recently opened the second branch in Al Mosul, the second largest city in Iraq that was invaded by ISIS.
Wow, what a story. And it's very interesting, and I think the biggest medal, though, should be your grandmother, because I have 5 kids and I don't know how I'm going to survive the next 5 years. So absolutely, she deserves a lot here in the story. Now, how did the company dealt with the challenges in the area? I mean, you had instability, you had war, you had all of that going on. I mean, how do you run a business when there's so much that's unknown? And how did you guys, were dealing with all of that?
Well, I believe it's something that maybe it's in the DNA of our family, all the challenges and all the things that we have seen. I mean, as you mentioned, and unfortunately, the Iraq situation, or overall, it's unstable, and the political scene that we have till today, with the corruption and with the different faces, I would say, of politicians, but still there's nothing been happening. So basically, what's been happening from long time back until today, in terms of we call it in terms of like this, the challenges, sorry, and the hard time that we've been facing, and it's until today, when it comes, we dealing with international organizations or financial institutes, the UBO, which is the ultimate beneficiary owner. Whenever they see Iraqis, we always get into like filtered, and many of them, they would rather not to deal with us because with our background and because of what we have seen as an ISIS and the influence of our neighboring countries. So definitely it wasn't an easy journey. The family, what they have been through with their challenges and with their achievements from the early 1990s until today, but I'm happy and proud that they've seen and they suffered from a lot of things and a lot of adversity, what have made us reach where we are today.
And what do you think was the toughest challenge, like the toughest point that you guys had to deal with, if you had to choose one, where you guys were really, dealing with a crisis?
So if we're talking about the Iraqi market, I mean, until today, the challenge is of our operations on a daily basis. So sometimes in the real estate development arm, we get here and there threats from undefined parties that they would like to have something to be paid under table. So basically, the challenges that we're still seeing, and we haven't, came over it yet. The operations and the risk that's coming along with the business that we are running in Iraq.
And if that's not enough, all what you guys had to deal with, you're in the airline business as well, and COVID made sure that this entire world would be shut down. How do you deal with that? How did COVID affected your business, and how do you handle it? What do you do with the employees that are uncertain? What do you do with everything, basically? How did you guys deal with that?
That's a very good question. I mean, definitely we didn't have a contingency plan when COVID hit at that time. it was out of the sudden. We woke up and the financial markets crushed 30%, 35%. And I believe a lot of organizations, family businesses and non-family businesses, didn't see it coming. Although some of them, they were speculating that there is a crash will be happening after COVID hit. What we have seen and what we have learned that it actually made us closer with each other. So we start meeting more as a G2. We start having more meetings, family times. In terms of our team and of our employees, I'm fortunate that our team didn't get any layoff, although we had to take a precautious strategy of cutting some of their wages, but we made sure that they stay with us even in the hard times. Regarding Emirates Airlines, I would just take you back to 2009. So the Emirates Airlines entered to the Iraqi market in 2010. We started our first station, it was in Al Basra, south of Iraq. Before that, the visas for Iraqi citizens, when they wanted to travel to UAE, it was being sold in the black market or in the parallel market. It was equivalent to $3,000 US. Can you imagine one visa that a citizen want to travel to UAE, and then from UAE could maybe go for a medical visit to India or to any other country, or to go for tourism or any other need of that. So we successfully broke that paradigm of the $3,000 black market monopoly, and then we had put a price which was very fair, equivalent to $70 US for per citizen to obtain a visa to UAE, and then you'll be able to travel all over the world, more than 1,300 destinations that Emirates Airlines fly to. The COVID situation, we suffered one of our sectors, which is the airline. We had our own sales offices in Baghdad and other major cities that was completely shut down in the quarantine, and unfortunate, but it's not something that we only suffered from. The whole world suffered from that pandemic. At the same time, the real estate development, we took a decision not to stop. So even with the quarantine and even with what we have seen, we continued building in the construction and the infrastructure, and until today, we have one of our flagship sales offices in Baghdad that we just we recently launched Buruj project, which consists of 24 towers. It's in a very strategic location beside the airport, so that definitely didn't get affected and kept going on. Yeah.
And how did COVID affect Iraq?
Well, until today, I mean, we don't have that well-organized healthcare system, unfortunately, in Iraq, and it's really sad with all the years and all the I would say the budgets that's being spent on a yearly basis from the government, that there wasn't a single clinic or a hospital that it's on the basic standards on the worldwide. So people are suffering. We got shipments of the vaccine, the vaccination from different sources, but still with our poor healthcare systems, the people are suffering indeed.
Well, I hope that is being resolved, will be resolved soon. And back to you and your family. So I understand, so your grandfather started the business, and then all of his kids joined the business on that generation, on the second generation?
So basically, I mean, having at that time 6 boys, as you said, it was a challenge, and they got raised, they got educated, and naturally they were, I mean, in terms of like the succession and the transition, it was happening on a natural basis. So whatever the founder have made of businesses, the G2 came over and they start working in that ventures at that time. Although one of the brothers, the eldest, have split in the early 1990s. So we have 5 of them until today. They are in the family business, and each one of them is leading one of the sectors that we have mentioned earlier in our discussion. So yes, I mean, in terms of the succession from the founder, it happened in a natural way to the G2.
And how do you deal with, when you're working with your family, it's good and not good. It's good because you trust them and you're all definitely on the same boat. But on the other hand, if you have disagreements or, if you're managing your brother or whatever, did that go smoothly? I mean, each took a different sector, so everything's fine? Or, I mean, how did that work for them?
So one of the principles that my great grandfather have installed in his G2, and even it cascaded to the G3, is whatever happens in the business stays in the business and you don't take it home. So whatever, if there is any issues or there's any problems that's happening between the brothers, definitely it happens. There is no perfect formula for a family business that goes without any issues. But definitely that really helped because we're a human being. Someone agrees with you, others wouldn't agree on a plan or a certain idea or a certain thing. So they managed to overcome all of these, I would say, arguments in a good and professional matters.
And you're G3, so what's happening in your generation? Who from the G3 is in the business? And if you can share with us also if you have brothers and sisters and if they are in the business or planning to.
So yes, definitely I would, in G3, I do have 2 siblings, 2 younger sisters, and I have 13 cousins, boys and girls. So myself, I am in the business. I'm managing director of Dubai office. I got my cousin who's leading on the exchange house business between UAE and Iraq. The others are still in a way of a mirroring program. Still, some of them are studying, and we have worked on a very important step in our family business, which is the family constitution and empowering the next gen and seeing who would be or she would be interested in the family lines of business, and then they get trained and they get refined, raising their capacity building, and then they would get into an assessment and evaluation, and then they would enter in the line that they would choose.
Now, can you tell us a little bit about the tech world in Iraq? I mean, you've invested a lot to build the largest hub for these guys. First of all, UAE does a lot to bring these guys to their territory, right? When it comes to taxations, facilities, everything to draw these guys. So how does even Iraq can compete with that? And what's going on? How does the Iraqi tech world looks like? I mean, if you can share with us a little bit.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, we cannot compare UAE and their initiatives. They just recently, Dubai government launched an initiative of offering 100,000 programmers to come over Dubai, and they can work from here, and the best 10 or the best 1,000, they would get a golden visa, which is 10 years. And as you mentioned, the taxation and other aspects or other pillars that they would see. From our perspective, the tech world and the entrepreneurial world in Iraq, it is thriving in the past 10 years. So we have seen a lot of startups that's tackling and solving a lot of issues in the community. Through the station foundation, we're offering a co-working space, an incubator, and we're giving them training programs, mentorship, and even an access to finance if we see the the startup or the idea, it's well enough and matured enough, like in the ideation stage, definitely through our bank, then they get the access to finance. The e-commerce world is also one of the important businesses now in Iraq. There is 4 of leading e-commerce platforms that they're doing really well. One of them we have invested as well. We got the fintech. It is picking up from I would say from the beginning of 2020. Yeah.
But what can Iraq do to preserve these guys and not let them run away to, again, the UAE or places that would give them way more support? I mean, how do you deal with that issue?
That's a good question. Well, I mean, we'll be very happy that we can incubate them and give them whatever they need. And for us, from our perspective, the success story for any startup that will be in the radar of any international VC, or they will be going to UAE or going to the region, or maybe heading to the States, we'll be more than happy that it got incubated, it got refined, and then they go on a worldwide. Soon we will see a couple of startups that international key players or VCs of the region will be investing in them.
And how many companies are there right now with you at your hub?
30.
30 companies. Wow. And how long? When was that established again?
The station, it was established in 2018.
Wow. So that's nice. So it's been very hectic 2 years.
It's been a good change, a good impact in the community. So definitely, I mean, we have almost 1 million graduates. They graduate yearly from universities, and what we have seen and realized back home that the graduates, they focus on the public sector jobs. They just want to get in any job in the public sector. So it's a way of something of an ease, something of a comfort zone. So we try to break that paradigm shift and take them off the comfort zone, give them different initiatives, put them in different camps, boot camps, and then from there, whoever does have an idea, have something that they would be willing to do or willing to go for, definitely they would be filtered, and then they would be seeded, as I mentioned earlier.
So we have questions from folks here, but we'll get to it in a second because some of them we will talk about soon. So can you, let's go back to you and your being this third generation. How did you come to join the family business? What was the path? What were the expectations from you? What would have happened if your father would say, you should join the business, and you'll be like, I want to play violin, Papa?
Yes.
You can share that with us.
It all starts from I would say the summer holidays when I was in school. So at that time, my father was taking me with him to the office, and at that time it wasn't really fun to go to office and sit between adults and listening to conversation that I didn't understand at that time. But year after year, the way that him and the uncles, which is the G2, it was a really blessings. And even my grandfather, when he was in life, when I was around him, listening to them and listening to their wisdom and the way how they communicate, it all helped in shaping who I am today. And it was, as I said, it was like a blessing. It was like a mentor thing that I used to get from them. So from there, going to university on the free time, I was going to the family office and sitting and then getting to know the businesses, the sectors. And I had the opportunity of, working outside the organization. I've done my internship outside the organization in Baghdad in different businesses, part of the family business itself. And I gained experience, I gained knowledge, and I came back, started as an associate, started as well as a mirroring program, and definitely as a G3, as like they always say, and we are here in a family business webinar, like from generation 1 to generation 2, like there's a 30% of succession rate. From generation 2 to generation 3 is like around 15 or 10%. So myself and definitely others, I believe most of the one with us, like a millennials, would agree on breaking that fallacy of okay, the third generation and passing it to the fourth generation. So that's why we're working strong, like really hard with the relatives, and working with respected consultants and advisors in respect to the wealth structuring and the family governance, to make sure that the legacy, and to make sure that the founder himself, when he created the business, to go and strive for generations to come.
Thank you. Now, what would you say is are the biggest changes that have been made since you taking leadership in your organization? What changes have you been able to implement? What has been difficult to change?
That's a very important question, Danny. In any organization, the most two important pillars is culture and people. So in our region, the culture, it's not as, I would say, in the US or in Europe, the Arabic mentality, it differs. So working on the culture of our organization, and building a resilience and loyalty of our people in the organization. That's one of the things that, from taking the position of, as you mentioned, to be a leader, and the leader itself, the leadership, from my perspective and from my meaning, it means is to be able to serve. So listening to our people and being able to give value to them, motivate them, develop their skills, and uplifting them. That's one of the things that I worked on, and it really paid off on their personal level and on the organization itself.
And what was the toughest thing for you to implement? I mean, did you come with some ideas that people were like, we're not sure we want to go that path?
Yes, definitely. The family focus is the Iraqi market indeed, and UAE. So that's the two markets that we're focusing on. What we have seen in March with the whole pandemic, one of the good things that it's been, I would say, got approved from the G2 was diversifying the business abroad, and being able to invest in the global market. And from there, we started investing in the US market in different investment products that it wasn't there pre-corona scenario or theme. So this is one of the things that was able to put on the table and get the buy-in from the G2.
And by the way, so you're in Dubai, the company is in Iraq, so you go back and forth a lot?
Yes. It is a 2 hours flight from here to Iraq, so we go and come most of the times. But with the COVID thing now, it's got reduced. Our travels are more restricted.
And I assume you fly Emirates.
No doubt, yeah.
So one of the questions here leads me to a question I have. So Richard is asking, how has the family ensured the development of each succeeding generation so that they are prepared to steward their wealth? Which kind of leads me to my question anyway of have your family drafted the family constitution?
Very good question, thank you. Yes, we have worked on the family constitution 2 years ago. And as you all know, the family constitution, it's kind of the policies and procedures or the controls that the family, like each family work on, and definitely every family business in context, it differs from other family businesses, and even the family businesses that working in the region, it differs than family businesses that working in the States, that working in Europe. So we have succeeded in that stage. We are now also working in the wealth structuring and the family governance, certifying it, and rectifying the dynamics of the family constitution and have it embedded in the business.
And what kind of elements were included in the family constitution? Is it values and vision statements, or is it more specific about ownership and control?
So one of the main things that we are focusing on, it's the story of the family. So from day one, when the founder himself, how he started the business and how the challenges that he faced and all of this. So how to cascade this from generation to generation. Values is always there, integrity, having good relationship with the other siblings and other relatives, communication that we always value, and even our annually meetings. So we get to meet 2 times a year, and then we get to discuss on a personal matter, on things that makes us as a family together. It's a part of the business and aspects of the business.
I will talk soon about the conference we're doing at the UAE. One of the partners there is INSEAD, which we probably should have had here to hear what they think about, the scary statistics that are basically third generation. Not over 90% of businesses don't survive third generation, which, by the way, is not that accurate if you take into consideration that some just sell on third generations. And that's not a failure. It's just that many decide, okay, let's cash out. So if you exclude that, I'm not sure how bad the situation is, but it is a critical stage in the business. But I want to ask you basically about G2 and the transition there, because again, you guys had several brothers that took over. And again, there is a lot of, might be issues with that. Somebody thinks he should be leading, another one thinks he should be leading. Things get complicated. So in respect to the transition between G1 and G2, in the past, did the business pass naturally from your grandfather to your father and uncles? Or were there any issues around succession that they had to explore further?
Okay, if I may just go back to your point, the 90% that you mentioned from INSEAD. We always hear these numbers and all these facts about the family businesses, and even the third generation they might sell, or the fourth generation. And let's go to zoom out from the family business. Even publicly listed companies, what's their average lasting? 15 years in the business. Startup world, 70 to 90% of the startup fail in the first year or second year. So just having the spotlight on the family businesses and third generation or fourth generation, and they might not survive. Definitely there would be a default rate but the default and the succession, we can definitely look into it. So yeah, that's always when this subject always comes in terms of the succession rate and what's been happening. So it's not something to be afraid from. If you have the family constitution, if you have the values in line, if you have the siblings and the relatives, they are believing in each other, and the trust factor is there, and the support factor is there, and the most important thing is love. And the love, if it's not there, between a family members, you would do the best family constitution and you would draft the best thing that you put on the table, but who would take it in consideration if that element is not there between the families? From our experience, from the founder to the G2, it was a natural transition and succession plan that happened. Sorry, although as I mentioned, we have one of the uncles. He split in the early 1990s, and as I mentioned, the love factor until today. Whenever he have an issue, whenever he have a problem, his brothers will stand on his back. They'll never let him. From our side, the G3, it becomes harder and harder. Definitely, there is an advisors, and there is a team that is looking into onboarding the next gen in the family business. What the skills needed, what is the competency that is needed, the meritocracy level that is needed, and we get evaluated, and we get on the end of fiscal year the numbers that we have done and what progress we have made. And with that all been said, the good thing from our I would say G2 is failure. The failure, it's been something that we appraise. We're not afraid of someone if fails in something or someone do something wrong. We can appraise it and acknowledge it, but we don't repeat that failure again.
You know that this session is being recorded, so any one of your family members can come back to you and say, hey, you remember you said that about failure? Because we just messed up half of the business, but I hope you're fine with it. Anyway, I just want to clarify, it's not an INSEAD research. I just mentioned them because they are our academia partners. It's just, all around the place, the research shows that. And soon we'll get to the questions from all of you guys here. Is there, are there any values or lessons or traditions that instilled in you that you find now valuable and you pass to your children in time?
Yeah, great question. I mean, what I have seen and what the values that we've been raised from my parents and even from the founder himself, working in integrity, working in helping each other and standing beside each other and not, I mean, competing with each other. That's one of the things that definitely I would like to pass on. Always help others, be a force of good, and be a low profile and do whatever you can do if needed from you. So definitely that value is in us, and that's the things that I would cascade to my son and generations to come after.
Thank you. Now let's see a couple of questions from our attendees here. Mark is asking, what were the most significant challenges you faced in curating a family constitution? Did you encounter particular gender issues in addressing leadership and governance in your family office?
Okay, that's a very good question. In terms of the family constitution, one of the biggest challenges that we saw, it is, like I would put it in a way that the control or the ownership from each of the G2. So each one is leading on something and having an ownership of a particular business and a certain power. Working on a family constitution, you would consolidate all that in one place and have it complied and full governance. So it's not easy for a founder of a business to let go the ownership and the power of him or her into the family constitution. But I mean, luckily enough, that was agreed between the brothers, and even in more of in-depth, the percentage-wise, how they come on an agreement that, okay, you would get that certain percentage to you, that goes that certain percentage to X or Y. In terms of the gender or diversity, proudly, our family and other family businesses in Iraq, we're having that open diversity, inclusion, and even in our workforces, we got more than 40% of our workforces, it's women. So yes, I think that it's something that it's important to be gender diversified.
What are the promising startup investments or standout companies you have seen from either the UAE or Israel over the past year or two, Iraq?
Come again with the question, sorry?
So the question is, what are the most promising startup investments or standout companies you've seen from either the UAE, Iraq, Israel, all around the region?
So I will focus on Iraq by all means, because we're talking about the family business, which is coming from Iraq. The startups that I've seen interesting and promising and that have a lot of potential would be the e-commerce startups that we have in Iraq.
E-commerce. And by the way, how open do you think the region is to invest in that? I mean, when you're looking at major families around in the UAE and all around, would you think they would mostly invest in real estate and oil and gas and segments they know better, or they are open for the high risk world of startups? Do you see others like you out there that are opening themselves? I mean, again, the UAE does a tremendous job to attract innovation and technology, but do they also get the support of the local investors, do you think?
I believe the appetite is there, and there is a certain percentage of each family business or family office portfolio, and as you mentioned, like a high risk or startups, private equity. UAE have done a tremendous job in all aspects in that era. Back home, as I said, it's been thriving. There is a lot of challenges that's facing the startups, the business owners. We also working with them hand in hand on coming over all these hurdles. But yes, within 2 to 3 years from now, we're definitely going to see successful startups coming out of Iraq and getting invested from international VCs.
And by the way, how do you see the future? The political issues in the region in general. The US comes in and out, and some get stronger, some get weaker, instability. But some things happen that we are happy about, as we all know, in the region, that brings more stability. But how optimistic are you regarding Iraq and regarding the region in general?
Yeah. Well, we always been raised to focus on the private sector, the political scene. Talking about back home, a lot of damages in the infrastructure and the political scene instability. We don't see it in any time soon. It would be stable. Although Iraq is a key player in the region and it's got its important geography and its neighboring countries, no doubt, and nevertheless, the Arabic offspring, we have seen the results of it and what came out of that impact. None of the countries that done what they have done, they have seen a good impact on their economy and on their people. As I said, focusing on the private sector, focusing on impacting real individuals and the communities. For us, it's more important than political scene. Sorry, because it is not in our hands at the end.
And another question here, I see, what critical characteristics do you look for when engaging with outside advisors and consultants?
I mean, reputation will be always a key that we will be looking into the history of the consultant or the advisors, in what sectors they are working in, and what achievements they have done, their methodology, and the way how they work things. That's the things that we will be looking in consideration.
Another one, though a lot has been done to boost the startup ecosystem, what do you think is still lacking? Is it absence of big VCs or some other reasons in the UAE in general?
Can you repeat that question again? Sorry.
Sure. The question is, though there's been a lot to boost the startup ecosystem in the UAE in general, in all the region, what do you think is still lacking? Is it absence of big VCs, other elements? What do you think is still missing in the tech ecosystem?
UAE, I mean, their plan of tracking, getting talents over. I mean, it's something that we saw, and I would just go to another aspect of how the UAE would be looking into it. They have eased a lot of restrictions. So one of the laws in UAE, when you want to start a general trading business, or like most of the businesses that you would like to start in UAE, you should have a local partner, which is owning a 51% of the structure. So they have eased that, and now foreigners or expats can get 100% of the ownership of their business, and that is a game changer nowadays in the UAE economy. In terms of the big VCs, I believe they will be as well approaching and coming in the market, because the government is being really supportive. They're really opening doors for talent, for shapers of the startup world. So the support is being given in abundance in different aspects from the UAE government.
I think the point you mentioned is very, very important. And one of the things the UAE does to get so that people would feel convenient in investing there. And that's a very important point, that you can own your own business and not be dependent. And some would have say, what, it's always the locals that would get the better treatment by the local law rather than the outsiders. And that's been changing, and I think that allows them to feel more convenient. Which brings me soon to part of why we do the conference that I'll talk about in a second. So another question, Sinjai is asking, UAE is a home to 200 countries. I didn't know that. How tough is it to strike a balance from business point of view, say Israel, Palestine, or other rival histories? Sensitive question here. I like those. So how tough is it to strike a balance from business point of view with bringing all these countries together that might have some rival history between them?
Yeah, I think there is 150 nationalities living in Dubai, and the population of Dubai is 3,300,000. I mean, I always call it as a big organization that we're all working in it in Dubai. So we get the blessings, and we get to meet different nationalities, different backgrounds. The question itself, in terms of how to balance that. The political stability in the country, and them being, would say, protective, and being on a more of a conservative, not being open to other conflicts in the region. That's one of the, I would say, key elements of the stability of UAE itself. That's what I can answer, and that's what's on top of my mind at the moment. I don't know if I answered the question probably.
Is there any bankruptcy law that supports startup failures?
In where?
They didn't specify. So I guess in Iraq, in the UAE.
That's a very good question,
In
by
the
the way.
UAE, then I right
Yeah,
here.
in Iraq, we don't have it yet, unfortunately. And in UAE, I have to be accurate on that, but I haven't heard such a thing. I think there's no such a law implemented, but definitely I can, I mean, email whoever asked the question, but I haven't heard of, and it's a very good question. Came over, yeah.
Omar, I've never seen so many questions in one session. So
Wow.
that's
Please.
because you are a very interesting guest. Do you think
Thank you.
it is a high time for the banking systems, financial institutions, to start looking into funding startups, become more flexible with the regulation?
Well, we are working on an initiative in Iraq, I would say, a fund that's from the private banks, like a consortium from 5 to 10 banks, and then that fund will take a role in investing in the startup world and giving the support for the potential startups, because we all know that the main biggest challenge of any startup, it's cash. It's the fuel that they would take them into different rounds and different stages in their life cycle. So we are working on that initiative, and definitely if that can be done from different banks and from I would say different countries that can adapt such a thing, that would be a good booster for the startup world, and could give them more even confidence in their businesses.
And by the way, this problem is everywhere. I can even tell you that maybe the banking system is easier than other places in Israel, for instance, startup nation, so to speak, to support startups. But I can tell you, when we did the institutional investment conference and I got more into the institutional space, the big issue people had with institutionals was that they don't invest, the Israeli institutionals, in startups in their own country. And when you hear the institutional, they also have a good explanation. They're saying, listen, I need to allocate billions of dollars. Are you kidding me now? Do you think I have time to deal with this startup and that startup, or even a fund? You know, I need to allocate a lot of money. This is a hassle. It's a headache. It's high risk. And you know what? Even if I'll triple my money on that investment, it's nothing amongst the sea of cash I need to manage. So they go to the real estate, they go to oil, they go to whatever, but they don't want to deal with all of that. So it's just, you know, something that's been around. I think that the government now in Israel is trying very hard to give them to, you know, to pay a dollar for every dollar they put. They all the time try to push them more into that direction. And Harish here says the banks are losing the huge opportunities by not investing and supporting startups. And that's absolutely true. Maybe just another question. Oh, we answered that question. So yeah, so you know, the first of all, guys, Omar will be with us in person, I hope, both at our conferences across the US and Canada, UK, and all around, but definitely at the one we're doing at the UAE. And I see our friend Robin is still with us. I'm checking all the time. I'm making sure he's alert and listening. And we built really a very exciting event, but it's very challenging because we were not about to do just another conference, which means, you know, it's way easier for us located in New York to go to Canada, to go to Latin America. We have plenty of destinations. But when I came to the UAE, and even before that, when Robin introduced me to loads of families and associations, I saw people that are smart, charming, sophisticated, long-term strategy. And when I sat with one of the major CPAs in the region and asked him, why I want to see more Americans here. I want to see more Latin Americans, Canadians. What about that? We see Europe. And the answer was destination, really. It's just far. And so one of our challenges here, and we do a conference that's with great partners, right? Like the Ministry of Economy, in Siad, the Chamber of Commerce at Abu Dhabi, and many Sharjah, and many great collaborators. And I want to thank my partner in the region, Biju, and his team as well. But the main thing we want to do here is show what the region has to people that for them it's a bigger hassle to start traveling to the other side of the world. And I can tell you it works. I can tell you that from the sessions we're doing, the highest number of people that check the video later and join are all those related to the UAE. So I think for us, it's not just to do another conference, it's to create another meeting place, and not just bringing people from London. That's easy. We want to bring the other side of the world as well. Arish says, in India, millions are lost by banks through bad loans given even to reputed companies, but they still don't support startups. Yeah, I definitely agree. I think this is about the questions we had here so far, Omar. Oh, and we exactly 1 hour on. First of all, I want to thank you for being here. Anything else that you would like to add, Omar?
Yeah, I mean, Denny, I would like to acknowledge you coming to UAE and taking that approach. Definitely, it's not an easy thing getting two different continents, cultures, time zones all together. So with what we have seen with the travel, getting ease more. Yesterday, said Richard Branson is in the space. So definitely with the changes that we are seeing from our region, we would love to get to know more and learn from the backgrounds that family offices from your region. So it kind of can be kind of a blended learning experience, and we need that. I mean, from my end, I definitely can work on an initiative on getting different family offices or family businesses from Iraq to fly to US, and then can discover what synergies that can be done, and vice versa. The family businesses from US coming to the region, to GCC, to Iraq. I mean, our country in a need of 5 million house units. Can you imagine how big is that? We are working on developing 20,000 house units. So there is a lot of things that can be done. There's a lot of demand, and that's what made us successful, humbly, with a lot of humility, that when we come to do a business in Iraq, we do it with a very high standards on international practices. So definitely ourselves and other the family businesses can come and do a lot in Iraq and in GCC in general. So we're looking forward your presence in UAE soon, and I would like to thank Robin, and I believe I got a couple of fellow YPO members from my own chapter there on the call. So thank you for being here, and thank you for all your listeners that being with us today.
Yes, absolutely. And again, I will not market more our conference. I will just say it's chaired by the Silverstein family, the owners of the World Trade Center, and a family that's been doing business in the region for many years. And we will bring fascinating speakers from the Sheraton family to the founder of Ethereum, entrepreneurs from Israel, from Latin America. It's going to be very interesting. And I want to say, we all praise the UAE for all the efforts it's doing to become global, but let's not forget, you guys have just great food, you know? That's the first thing I'm doing when I'm reaching the Dubai again, is giving you a call and checking another great restaurant.
Will do.
And when you come to New York, let me know. And I would like to tell you all, tomorrow we have another session. As you can see, we're very busy. It's the third session this week with a Canadian entrepreneur, that a serial entrepreneur that built companies from ground to where they are, and managed to take them public, each and every one of them. And we'll be talking with him tomorrow, David Lukacs, at the same time, 11 EST. I would like to thank you, Omar, so much for your kindness and for being here. And I'm looking forward to meeting you in person, either at a restaurant or at a conference.
Likewise, Denny. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, everybody. And please stay safe. We'll get through this thing. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.